Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs. We're getting started a little early on this morning to take up the Pay Act as we're heading in the last couple of weeks of the legislative session on Gobbling and Creek Don't Rise. And I want to appreciate Commissioner Fastigi and your team for coming and joining us again. And yeah, if you have additional things you'd like to tell us about the Pay Act, it's our committee's intention to try to get the last few things on the record and move the bill out this week.
Good morning. I'm Beth Fastigi, Commissioner of Human Resources. And to my right is Harold Schwartz. He's the Department of Human Resources Director of Operations. And John Berard is on my left. He's the Director of Labor Relations for the Department of Human Resources. And we are here to talk about Pay Act. And the purpose of Pay Act is to fund the pay and the benefits for state employees, and particularly the collective bargaining agreements that we've agreed to with the VSEA and other unions. And then also the funding and the parameters for the rest of the employees that are not covered by collective bargaining agreements. And we encourage you to support and pass this bill.
And with my understanding from our conversation last week, and I just wanted to talk a little bit for the committee because I don't think many of us have been through the process, that this was a relatively not contentious Pay Act process. The increases that were negotiated and the position between the administration and the management and the labor side were.
Generally, once we get to Pay Act, as long as it's not an agreement that was, it's not an agreement that was imposed, you're going to get perfect alignment between the unions and the state.
And so this contemplates for the next 2 fiscal years. So next year, there won't be a Pay Act. The following year would be the next time that we would have to take a look at 2026.
Yes.
So this will cover fiscal years 25 and 26. Representative Ridley.
Mr. Chair, I had asked this last time in regards to, I know there's a step increase as well as, the across the board cost of living. What about the other benefits? What was negotiated through, say, healthcare and dental and eyeglasses and that sort of stuff? Is there something you can tell us in regards to that?
Yeah, I'll let John talk about those.
Yeah, we negotiated no changes to the health plans in this round. We were really focused on wages.
Okay, thank you very much.
I wanted to ask a little bit about the paid holiday negotiation. I don't know if that doesn't have a big fiscal impact, but I know that is sort of shifting in this bill, and you've got that in your written testimony. And just wanted to confirm that Juneteenth and Indigenous Peoples Days are premium pay holidays, and that Bennington Battle Day is going off that list. Is that?
It's almost correct. It's only for the corrections unit and in all likelihood, the Troopers Association.
Okay.
Supervisors and non-management were not agreeable to that provision.
I think it is our intention to take back up S-206 before the end here. And this is all the more reason to say officially on the books that Juneteenth is a holiday, since it's going to be recognized, at least in part, as a paid holiday.
We'll have 2 different holiday calendars.
Do other folks on the committee have questions for?
And I think that you've probably already heard kind of the outline, the highlights of the collective bargaining agreements, but we're happy to walk through those again as well with this committee. But I think you heard those on Friday, right?
Yeah. Does anybody? I mean, I think it might be worth just hitting the bullets for the record in case for folks back home, and it is a reminder to us about the key items here.
As Mr. Chair stated, they're the collective bargaining agreements for 2 fiscal years, fiscal year 25 and 26. And For all bargaining units that I'm talking about here, it's our non-management, our supervisory, and our corrections bargaining unit. We also increased our tuition reimbursement amount from $350 per credit to $540 per credit, with no changes to existing funding. So people who are taking courses can get more of those courses reimbursed. For non-management and supervisory only, the salary and wages are what we call as the across-the-board increase of 4.5% in fiscal year 25, plus the continuation of steps. So our pay charts are on steps. So the longer that you're in that job, you would get a raise kind of automatically as you step through from the first step to the 15th step, taking 24 plus years to get to the top pay. At the beginning of your career, the step increases come sooner, and then towards the end, it's every 3 years you would get that step. So the average value of a step is 1.9%, but the people who are getting steps are actually getting an additional 3 to 4%, but every employee doesn't get a step every year. And then in fiscal year 25, the across the board increase is 3.5%. And then also in we've included that continuation of steps in the total cost of the pay act. Then for the corrections bargaining unit, they bargained a new pay chart, a new pay plan. So the new pay plan is rather than the standard across the board increase in steps, it's the new pay plan. And then in August of 2024, they will actually get, in July of 2025, they'll get a $1 across the board increase. And then they will start to begin to get steps on their new pay chart. We also have provided corrections officers 1 and 2 will be getting a bonus. And the amount of the bonus, it's $3,000 per year for salaries that are less than $75,000 and $2,000 for people with a base salary greater than $75,000. There's a security differential for when people are working in corrections facilities, they get an extra $2 per hour. And then there's a special teams increase, and if you need more information on special teams, but the allowance for looking at a special team has increased from $500 to $750. As we were just talking about, they did agree to have Juneteenth as a holiday and Indigenous Peoples Day, and they will be foregoing the Bennington Battle holiday. And let's see. And their existing tuition reimbursement plan was outside the collective bargaining agreements. Now it's within the collective bargaining agreement. And those are the highlights. There's a lot.
For context on the corrections piece, I think this body heard a lot of testimony over the last couple of years about the struggles corrections was having with staffing. And so our compensation person did a market factor analysis. Based on that, it was clear that we needed to make some changes. And so the parties ultimately kind of created a brand new pay plan. But along with that, we also negotiated the ability for corrections to use 12-hour shifts. So straight time for 12 hours and then time and a half after 12 or 40 in a work week, which creates a work-life balance for them because they can do a rotating schedule. You work 7 days out of every 14. And so it gives them more days off. It gives everybody weekends occasionally. And we've seen a positive impact, but we needed to do something. And so we tried to address the pay across the board, but also specifics related to the security work. So that's where those changes came from ultimately.
And then just as far as the negotiated across the board increases for all state employees, it is large. It's the largest since I've been in here. And historically, it's really the largest 2-year increase in the past 20 years. It is big, but recognizing that what's happening in the economy and what's happening in the economy is affecting all employees, from our frontline employees to our highest level employees. So that is going to provide that adjustment and hopefully help us retain some of the value folks we have in our workforce. So, I mean, I know that pay isn't everything. We have a great benefits package as well, but recognizing that the economic conditions has changed as well as really trying to retain those employees. I think it's really important that we approve the funding for this.
Zimmerowski.
Actually, slip going back to corrections staffing levels, how are we doing there?
We're seeing a positive impact. The vacancy rate has fallen by about 6% at the last count. So it was up above 20. It's down around 13 or 14% now. And it's trending the right way based on what I'm hearing.
I really appreciate the attention and I know the negotiations have been difficult, but that it seems like they've borne fruit. I know I have a constituent who's a recruiter at Northwest Correctional Facility who's talked about the progress and some of the tools, the Group G creation that we did during the pension conversation last biennium. I'm hoping the combination of things like that benefits package and what you've done here will help the better quality of life and also lowering that vacancy rate, because if you have, all those openings mean the people who are there have to work overtime and it is difficult and dangerous work in some circumstances. So
We really think that that it will help. And we've been seeing the impact of the 12-hour shifts and making that and providing those employees with a better opportunity to have that more positive work-life balance is really hoping that is making a difference. I mean, those are very difficult jobs and in this labor market, even harder to fill than they've ever been.
Thanks. In regards to the constitutional officers, I was just wondering like how long you've tied that pay to state employee.
I've been here 7 years, so that's
I've been here 19. That's the way that it's been done.
What was the question?
It was about the constitutional officers and how we do pay and pay out.
Yeah, that's historically, we've done it that way, as long as I've been here.
which is longer.
When this switch is quite a while.
Yeah, and it's the tradition has been for as long as I've been involved that the negotiated increases apply to those constitutional officers. And it was 4 years ago, I think, that we also had the legislative salary, small though it is, that weekly salary also be tied to that same adjuster.
We did get the question and said in the GovOps about the governor's salary and how high it was. It's kind of high even compared to other states, but so other states also, most states, I looked it up after on Ballotpedia, but only 5 states governors don't have homes that come with their job. So this is one of those states. So even though the pay may be lower or higher than other states, the benefits that our governor gets are not nearly as high as getting a house and staff.
Well, I think it's been my approach to this pay act to respect the negotiation between administration and the union, and try to move forward a clean bill. I'm also cognizant of the fact that the governor's salary, other constitutional officers are relatively high compared to other similar states. And on top of that, it is a little bit of a bitter pill for us who've had a difference of political opinion about the importance of legislative compensation. And we're not addressing that in any, other than the inflation adjuster that's tied to it and brought along. We're not addressing the things that, this committee and others tried to in this bill. And I think that we're going to continue to see the kind of turnover and financial difficulty and the pressures that are on, and you can see it in our agenda today, the pressures that are on legislative service right now and what we're trying to pack into 17, 18 weeks of service. But we're not addressing that here in this bill. And I am cognizant of that for many of our colleagues in and out of this room. It's a hard thing to look at the salaries and the compensation in the executive branch and know that we're not solving those challenges that we were trying to address in S39 here. So just wanted to say that. We're not gonna do that here in this bill.
Just to add on that though, also in this bill is the compensation for the full-time staff in the legislative branch as well. So they also are able to have that same compensation treatment that the executive branch and judiciary branch does.
Percentages.
You said full-time, does that not include the part-time, like the seasonal folks for just when we're in session, like, or,
You know how that,
If they're considered year round, yeah, it doesn't apply to that.
it applies to all staff.
Yeah, okay.
and, we used to have a governor's residence, but it wasn't used, so we released it, right?
Well,
Was
no idea.
No idea.
Oh.
Anybody got the history? Was there a governor's residence long ago?
I think this is one of the
Historically,
few states that
yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
have one or has never had one.
Or offers a housing stipend that's very notable.
Yeah, I think it was back with Governor Shumlin.
Nah,
No, that was a private property.
Yeah.
That
That was not a state property.
was a thing.
Anyway, yeah. Yep,
So,
just
I
one more
just-
thing.
Oh, yeah, please.
When you're looking at non-bargaining unit salaries, the thing to remember though is you use the term exempt and not, that means something different. So we have exempt from the classified service. And we also have folks who are not covered, are in the classified service, or are not covered by collective bargaining agreements. Harold and I, for example, are in the classified service, but we're not covered by the collective bargaining agreements. So there are distinctions there. For example, command staff for the state police are exempts. So when you start looking at exempt salaries, you need to take a deep dive into what you're actually referring to at that point, because technically all of the state police is exempt. The majority of them are covered by a collective bargaining agreement. So I just wanted to, I know there was a lot of questions about exempt salaries.
So
And
you're making the distinction between those who are exempt and not part of the potential for being part of the collective bargaining because their management, shorthand.
there are members of collective bargaining units who are considered exempt employees also, so you have to be careful about that too.
It's, yeah.
In
So
our,
that-
in our world, the classified service is limited to the executive branch. So when you talk about exempts broadly, you're talking about the judiciary, you're talking about the legislature.
Yeah, so even folks who are doing administrative work here at the State House or staffing legislative council, for instance, they are exempt. They're not part of the executive branch collective bargaining. agreement.
No, they're not part of the classified service.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, this,
Yeah,
the difference between exempt and classified versus a member of a collective bargaining agreement and not is the distinction that you're trying to make.
Yeah.
I'm muddying.
Dorothy really needs to know except for these two.
I think we want to have a understanding of it because it's going to come up significantly. And this committee, just this biennium, hasn't happened to had a lot of bills before us that are about, the positions we.
Right.
Yeah.
This is really the first highly technical.
Yeah.
Yeah, the constitutional officers, and then you have what we would call true exempts, at-will employees who are not covered by a collective bargaining agreement, not part of classified service. And then you have exempts who are covered by a collective bargaining agreement. And you have folks who are in the classified service, but not covered by a collective bargaining agreement. I mean, why make it simple?
We are a large employer here in state government. Did I see a hand over here?
Yeah.
Representative Waters, go ahead.
Yeah, it's back to our earlier conversation. I got a hot tip, 159 State Street.
Yes.
Agreed, revival, Chester Wright House was the governor.
All right, so somebody's gonna win a prize if they can say when it no longer was officially.
When was it
government
decommissioned as a residence?
I'm gonna go in all legislative duties for the day and figure this.
I want to know what the salary bump was. For the governor when they took. the
4
House
pennies.
away.
All right, there's gonna be some going back into the journals from the 1960s.
Yeah.
All right.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
50 safe. All right. Anything else that we should know? Any other questions from the committee? Great. I wanted to thank you, Commissioner Fastigi, and your team for helping explain this and for being with us this morning once again. I think we're going to have JFO come and give us a couple last words.
It was a late. 18 about short.
Welcome back, Catherine. Thanks for being with us.
Sure, I'm Catherine Bennett with the Joint Fiscal Office. I just wanted to clarify, last Friday, there was a discussion and there was some confusion about the percentage increase in salaries. And I think it was somebody brought up the sheriffs, there was something where and it looked like it was a 10%. And it was actually, I just want to remind everybody, it's actually still 6.4. It was a 2-year jump that we were all looking at, not a 1-year jump. So the layout of that particular section is not as clear as the other ones where they have the columns laid out. That one is in a sentence.
Yeah, so I wanted to clear this up because I was the one who flagged it on the record and probably gave both administration team and JFO team on this a little bit of anxiety for a brief moment. So if I understand it correctly, in the text, we're looking at a 2-year number because the number that was in statute is old. So when we have that number that's in statute, we're actually going back 2 fiscal years. So it's not a year over year comparison that I was making on the fly sitting here reading the bill. So my apologies for giving everybody a little bit of heart attack there, but
It's all awake, we were awake. We were just talking also about possibly the tables are easier to read. And so I don't know, in a few years, we will try to, if we're around and remember, we might try to move that sentence to look more like the other ones do in mind, just so that it's easier to follow the history of the salaries more clearly. And I will also just echo that we are all exempt, all the legislative staff are exempt. The session-only employees don't get benefits, and if you wanted to have Arlene Donovan, the head of HR, and she could talk to you about what their salary plan is. I don't want to speak for her, but that is one thing. But when you do think about exempts, I do want you to be mindful that they range to a variety of salaries, a variety of job duties, and so if you go down that road where you're talking about exempt, you need to understand it's quite a broad class of people across state government, and they all have we're exempt, they've got different issues and categorizations in the executive branch, and then I can't speak for the legislative branch, they would need to come in as well. But it's all different salaries, that's mainly what I wanted you to understand in job duties.
Catherine, I wanted to confirm with you that both the Senate and the House versions of the budget carry money for the Pay Act. To get that on the record this morning before we take any action. It looks like it actually came in a little bit lower than the original estimate from the House side, of my understanding.
That's right, it was 31.6, I think, is that right? And then it dropped to 30.6. I'm looking at how that's right. Yeah, so that we had a whole placeholder in the House, but we actually didn't have language in, which we probably should have, but we didn't, and we put it in the Senate just to make it clear that the money is there and being held.
I'm sure that $1 million has been spent by different appropriations members many times over now.
Yes, it has indeed. And that bill's now on committee conference at 11 today, so that will be where they go with it.
Any other questions for Joint Fiscal Office? Not seeing any hands. Thank you very much, Catherine. Anybody else want to get on the record before we? Sure, Mr. Howard, please feel free to come up and join us. We got a couple minutes here.
Steve Howard, Executive Director of the SCA. I just want to reiterate that the SCA does support the Pay Act, and we encourage you to also support it. I just have to, on behalf of our members in corrections, while we do support the agreement that we made with the administration, the information that I have is that the staffing crisis is actually not trending in the right direction. If you look at our members at the women's facility and at Marble Valley, we're at staffing levels around 30%. We're about 19 people short in Newport of the numbers we need for the more flexible scheduling that the administration spoke about. So I have to say that because our members do watch these hearings, and I don't want them to be under the impression that we agree with the perception that staffing is moving in a positive direction. We have a lot of work to do to solve that crisis. There's still many vacancies, and you heard the testimony from Leona Watt last week, a very seasoned supervisor, chair of our legislative committee, that the field, we still have a very serious problem with standby in the field and the inability to cover hospitals with the existing staff that we have on the special team for that purpose. So I appreciate the administration's testimony. I agree with what they had to say. I just wanted to get on the record that I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that we've solved the staffing crisis in corrections. It's still raging, and we have a serious problem there.
Still some work to be done, but this bill has got some steps in the right direction.
Yes.
Representative.
But just to be clear, are we at a continuum sort of thing, or is burnout driving things down as quickly as they're being replaced?
Well, this has been going on for like 5 years now.
Yeah.
So I think there is a systematic, it's not a temporary trend. It's not a market issue. It's not a COVID issue. It's been going on for quite some time. I think you've heard me testify, I think maybe in other committees or maybe in this committee, we have work to do on compensation, which this bill does do some of that. Although there are some changes in here that I don't know that we know what the impact will be until we see it actually implemented this fall. But there are also managerial issues that create a culture that disincentivize employees from staying.
Well, thank you, Mr. Howard. So committee, we have, just make sure that I have for us here. So we're still looking at drafts 1.5 here. Did anybody have any questions for legislative counsel? Let the hand go.
Thank you. Is Jen gonna come up, or should I just turn around?
No, Jen, go ahead, please. Since we had half a walk through the bill, I wasn't sure if folks had questions, and if they do, that's why she's here.
Thank you. My question is, just to be 100% clear on this, because I've gotten some questions on it. The percentages for legislators, which is us, how does that compare to what was laid out in S39, which were actual dollar amounts? Do you know?
Jennifer Kirby, Office of Legislative Counsel. So is your question, how did the 6.4% increase apply to the current year's numbers compared to the numbers in S39? I don't know. I'm looking at Catherine. We could do the math and get back to you, but I don't know off.
I would say that the complete annual compensation, depending on exactly how many weeks and who you were talking about in S39, was between a 40 and a 50% increase. So this is really, a small inflationary increase as opposed to trying to make the legislative pay a sustainable. This is not a transformational change in legislative pay the way S39 would have been a significant step increase. This is, just having us have the same kind of inflationary increase as many others in state government.
And the percentages again are?
Percentages in the bill are 6.4% and then 5.4%. 6.4 for FY25 and 5.4 for FY26.
And is JFO still here? Would you agree with that assessment that Representative McCarthy just said about the 40% in S39?
As a ballpark number, yes, it's been a long time since I looked at that, but
Okay.
that was a more substantial increase. This is really not that. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you.
Questions? And open it up for committee discussion. Anybody have anything they want to get on the record? I think that given that the BSEA representing a lot of state workers and the administration coming together and saying support this bill is resounding endorsement. I'm really hopeful that this will make some progress toward addressing some of the labor challenges, the turnover, and help to recruit and retain state employees. I think that we've talked a lot in various bills about the difficulty that we're having right now with state government being able to serve Vermonters well because of labor challenges, whether that's law enforcement recruitment or caseworker at DCF, right? So these are, it's important that we try to keep up with the labor market and inflation, to recognize this is a significant investment that we're making in the employees that serve Vermonters. And I think it's an important one, and I want to make sure that we get it on its way so that it has the appropriate time to be considered as part of the budget process. Representative Cooper, go ahead.
I appreciate you mentioning that. And, you know, I think we also have to realize there's a certain point where lack of family time, lack of personal time, you can throw money at it if you want to, but there are still people that it's going to be a break point. There are other things that need to be addressed in our workforce.
I think what we heard today is that our work is definitely not done, but that this is a step we can take in the right direction. Anybody else have anything they want to say before we move this along?
I guess I would. You know, I've heard some folks in this building say that, you know, Vermont state employees' jobs are some of the best, and the benefit package and so on, and the pay, it should be. The thing that I hear that concerns me is, though, a growing of government, that we need more of these types of jobs. And I just want to relay my impression and my constituency that doesn't work for the state of Vermont, and have an understanding here that, you know, overall in this building, that everything else that we do in this building that increases the cost for Vermonters that aren't state employees should be of concern. And we need to understand that. We need to understand that people that are on a fixed income, just drawing Social Security leverage, they're getting a 6.4% increase. People that, you know, are self-employed and competing out there with other folks aren't necessarily always having the benefits and the increases that our state employees get. So again, I want to say that I appreciate that, but I want us to understand too that, like I said, the laws that we pass and the increases that we continue, especially this year, I don't know how it's going to work out in the process of, you know, the two budgets from the Senate and the House, but all these program increases and cost increases are going to cost Vermonters, and I think we should be aware of that. That's all. Thank you.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, and thank you for pointing that out. I mean, I agree that people are challenged. I think the tax load on middle and working class people is at a point that we don't want to add to that. I think that's why we're trying to level the playing field and making the people who have done extremely well start to pay their fair share in the tax code. I think it's important that we start to level the playing field because the way income disparities have grown and grown and grown. We have a cohort of millionaires and corporations that pay little or no tax at all, and that means we pay their freight. So I think it's important that we continue to move forward as a body, try and level the playing field when it comes to income inequalities so that working and middle class people don't have to bear the burdens of the upper class.
One of the things I'm cognizant of, as we think about the bigger picture, what our budget looks like and what investments we're making, and reasonable people can disagree about, whether we do a new program, that one of the things that's very specific to this is we've got, roughly a $30 million across all of state government, increase that we're contemplating here. When we're booking more than $60 million, I think maybe even $70 million, if I look at the Senate version of the budget in vacancy savings, right? So there's something like more than double this increase in the people that we've got positions, but we're not able to fill them and we're not seeing them. And that we see that differently in different departments, as we saw in the presentation we had last week. But that pressure and the pressure it puts on things like overtime, we've got to have the right pay and benefits to have people working in a way that's sustainable for them and their families. And that's why, to me, this bill is so important. It's important that we make that investment, because I actually think that it's the better way to think about this in terms of, making sure we've gotten the right people doing the work. And we're having conversations elsewhere about, does it make more sense to invest in, outside agencies in some places versus making sure that it's state employees doing that? And I think those are going to be ongoing conversations for years that will never end, depending on which agency and which service we're looking at. Like, how do we best serve Vermonters is going to be the job of this committee and other places till the end of time. But here before us, I think we've got a reasonable negotiated step for the next couple of years. It seems like there's some big consensus on it, and I deeply appreciate the people who were at the table making that happen. Representative Hoover, go ahead.
I think Representative Higley raises a very valid point. It's always troubled me with the people on fixed incomes are really in a bind about what they can do. However, if you look at other historically minimum wage jobs, and there's a McDonald's in my town that's 15, 16 bucks an hour. There's a bagel shop on Church Street that's got a sign in their window, $20 an hour, come work for me. The downside of that is they're no longer high school kid jobs. They're like people that are doing it full time for a career sort of thing. You can't get high school kids jobs. It's like,
High school kids are making 18, 20 bucks an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Trust me. Yeah. Trust me.
so the economy sort of, it's sort of like the supply and demand thing is working in some ways. We're just, our job, I guess, is to make sure we're not on the wrong side of the supply and demand all the time. Because making bagels is a lot easier than sitting around and watching a fella and being yourself all there. Tough work.
Representative.
I agree with what folks are saying, and just want to add, I think that when we don't have enough funds to support the cost of employees and there's so much attrition and lack of people to do the jobs, I think it makes everyone in Vermont suffer, whether it's like businesses or seniors waiting for assistance from the state. And so I think paying people a little bit higher wage to make sure there's people in those positions will actually make things more efficient and save everybody money in the long run.
Well, we're going to be due up on the floor shortly. I really appreciate the thoughtful conversation. It's definitely some bigger themes that we're going to continue to noodle on here. But for the moment, I would entertain a motion to recommend favorably draft 1.5 of AX.
So moved.
All right, Representative Chase has made the motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk can commence to call the roll.
Representative Byron,
Yes.
Representative Boyden, yes. Representative Pingo,
Yes.
Representative Morgan,
Yes.
Representative Cooper Burlington.
Yes.
Representative Murphy,
Yes.
Representative Chase,
Yes.
Representative Waters Evans,
Yes.
Representative Cooper Randolph, Representative Nugent,
Yes,
Representative Higley,
Yes,
Representative McCarthy,
Yes.
11-0.
And you can list me as the reporter of the bill, Representative Boyden. I'm not 100% sure that this will go all the way through the process as a separate committee bill. It may end up being folded into the budget during conference, given the timeline, but I will keep track of it and work with our appropriations team that's in conference to make sure that we figure out the clearest path for it. So committee, it's my understanding that Robert is going to move that we're going to have floor going into the afternoon. So I'm going to put off the S9 and S96 testimony that we had scheduled. I want to still try and keep S55 moving, and we've let our witnesses know. And since they're mostly folks that we have local, I'm hoping they can come and join us as soon as we are off the floor this afternoon. So the agenda is getting updated, and we'll just be taking up S55, hopefully, assuming that the floor does get out, you know.
Yeah, you already did, it looks like.
Yeah, no, so you've been on top of it. I just wanted to make sure that folks knew what to look forward to this afternoon. I really appreciate everybody coming in early on a Tuesday to keep the pay act moving. And we'll see you all up on the floor in a few.